We usually open the page in the beginning, but this is now prolepsis, what's going to happen after I get my coffee. So what about English poetry? In the last episodes, we looked at the Italian poets, but now let's look at the English poets, specifically Surrey and Wyatt, and how they interpret Petrarch's poetry. The first thing you're going to notice is that the form of the sonnet changes, and with it a new logic or argument or development. That final tercet in the sestet, in the eyes of Surrey and Wyatt, it seems to carry the real turn or volta, so the form is altered. Let's go and look at 4 poems, 3 by Surrey, who I think is the great innovator, and 1 by Wyatt. The rhyme scheme is brings A, veil B, sings A, tale B, springs A, pale B, slings A, scale B. At this moment, you're thinking, so that's a variation of the octave, right? And then we go slings, small, small, B, mings A, bale B. So it's like an octave, that's the octave. And then it continues into a quatrain. So it's really 3 quatrains, right? Because if you notice what would be the 9th line, there is no volta. It continues with the argument. And then it ends with things springs, which is a rhymed couplet. Some of these repetitions are actually repetitions using the same words. So for example, we have springs and springs. And we use capital letters to designate repetitions. But notice also slings and slings. So maybe this is A1, A1, A2, A2. Not only do we have a poem built out of just 2 rhymes, which extends Petrarch's ABBA all the way to the end, but we also have the repetition of words. Now, unfortunately, these are not really like rime equivoques because they're not homonyms. If you look at both words, now springs and sorrow springs, there's no change in the grammatical case. There's no pun. They're literally the same words. Dittos with he slings and she slings. So in that case, the rhyme could be viewed as part of a lower order, or we could view them closer to antistrophe or epistrophe. Did you also notice the figures of anaphor and alliteration, as well as the meter, the trochees? Well, the anaphors are right here, aren't they? There's your anaphors for the hart, the buck, the fishes, the adder, the swift, the busy bee. You also have the alliteration I just noted. Bud and bloom and brings. You also have at that very first line an interesting case where trochaic inversion appears in the second foot. The sweet season. And then there's your caesura. And then that bud and bloom forth bring. So this is all about summer is coming, the world is renewed. The hart hath hung his old head on the pail. You hear the alliteration there, right? Lots of alliteration. The buccan brake, his winter coat he slings. The fishes fleet with new repaired scale. The adder all her slough away she slings. The swift swallow pursueth the fly is small. The busy bee her honey now she mings. Winter is worn. Doesn't this alliteration reminds you of that medieval alliterative verse, does it not? And then here is where we get the volta. And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. All his cares should be evaporating because of the beauty and the renewal of nature, but still his sorrows bring back to love. And let's look at the rhyme scheme again. Thought, breast, fought, rest. You're thinking, okay, this is his version of the Petrarchan octave. But then pain, C, I can mark right there. Desire, D, refrain, C, ire, D. And then apace. And then we get plain. And plain comes from this quatrain. Face, pain, and then we have remove and love, which actually rhyme, remove and love. What an interesting use of the sonnet, recognizing the sonnet's possibilities with rhyme. You get the opening, that is the octave. It then shifts into what is clearly a quatrain, CD, CD. And yet then, in the third quatrain, that C from the second quatrain continues on into the next one, and then it ends with a rhymed couplet, and we know it's the volta as well because we get that word yet. And then what does it say? Love that doth reign and live within my thought, and built his seat within my captive breast. Love is settled into my heart, clad in the arms wherein with me he fought. So in other words, love and he were at war with each other, and now love has won. He has basically occupied his heart. This is a military concept, and he's still carrying his arms. Oft in my face he doth his banner rest. But she that taught me to love and suffer pain, could this but move the volta up? In other words, the A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D. Is this actually the sonnet that's moved up? It's very interesting, right? There's anger now. And coward love. His purpose lost and dare not show his face. This is like a retreat now. Love, which first conquered, is now a coward and running away. It's a very confusing poem in terms of these relationships between love, the lady, and him. But it looks like the volta has been pushed upwards, and then what we're dealing with are the consequences of love's victory and then shameful defeat. And yet death too is kind of a triumph, isn't it? Did you also notice antimitable? That's when a repetition starts at the beginning of a line and then is picked up in the second line, but at the very end. So in this case, it's love and love at the very end. It's a very loose one, but love and love, the dominant force, right? So the quatrains and couplets are Surrey's innovation, even though they will be associated with Shakespeare. So let's look at the next two. Frail, season, fail, reason, avail, peason, tail, geezen, assail, treason, bewail, poison. It's the same. And then taken, shaken. You can see already how Surrey's working with the Petrarchan octave. Now it's extending down all the way. Brittle Beauty will open with two alliterated trochees before setting on with the iambs. Brittle Beauty. That's the caesura that nature made so frail. The beauty is momentary, but it doesn't last. Flowering today, tomorrow apt to fail. And notice as well that the volta begins here. Ah, bittersweet. That's the reaction to all this brittle beauty. That makes this a kind of final tercet that we know from Petrarch. Thou fairest as fruit that with the frost is taken, today ready ripe, tomorrow all too shaken. And that is a sententious rhymed couplet at the end. So even though we have a completely different structure, this bittersweet, which is B, and then the final couplet, which are CC, it functions like the second turn in the Petrarchan sonnet. I hope you're noticing that this is an English response to Petrarch. These sonnets are translations of Petrarch sonnets, but done in unique English ways. We've seen Surrey's innovations. Now let's look at Wyatt's My Galley. Forgetfulness, A. Pass, B. Alas, B. Cruelness, A. That is the Petrarchan octave, A, B, B, A. The next one is readiness. Case and a pace. I think you want to say CC, but I'm betting that this is a proper rhyme in English of the 16th century. Case, apace, fearfulness. So we have ABBA, ABBA. What is that? That's the Petrarchan octave, is it not? And then disdain, hindrance, ignorance, pain. We have an extension of the octave into quatrains, and then it ends with C consort, port, C. Where's the volta? We know it's in the couplet. An endless wind doth tear the sail apace of forced sighs and trusty fearfulness. In the Petrarchan sonnet, this is where the argument stops and now the volta begins. Is there a volta? A rain of tears, a cloud of dark disdain, hath done the wearied chords great hindrance. No, it's continuation of the argument. The stars be hid that led me to this pain. And now we get the volta. This is the English sonnet. Drowned is reason. Reason is in the water, drowned. This allegorical figure of reason can no longer help him fight against the irrationality of love. So notice the last two lines. Oh, thank you, Lynn, for this delicious espresso. You guys remember? Thank you. Notice now that the last two lines are now couplets. The shape of the English poem or sonnet now seems to have moved to 3 quatrains and a couplet. Though here we still see the Italian octave, it looks like the sestet has turned into a quatrain and couplets. So you see how, following the rhyme schemes, we get a sense of the form of each sonnet, and we also then get a sense of its structure and how it relates to an argument. So the new volta, which is now a rhymed couplet, adds a certain sententious element to the poem. It also gives, having this volta as the final couplets, allows for greater development in the body of the poem. Notice though that oftentimes you will find the old octave still functioning, and sometimes on the 9th line you're still going to sense, even in Shakespeare, that the volta is happening on that 9th line, but the couplets sort of help land the poem. In our next episode, we will look at Sidney's Astrophil and Stella.
Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell.
I love that. Ye Old Taco House. You know what ye is? Ye is just an abbreviation for the. It's just a medieval abbreviation.